It began so quietly that most systems barely registered it. Just a flicker. A single data point that could have been dismissed as a glitch. But then came another and another, across telescopes from Hawaii to South Africa, all quietly lighting up in unison. Something was out there. Something cold. Something silent. And it was moving faster than anything we had ever seen before. Not a comet. Not a meteor. And certainly not one of our own. What followed was a rare moment of global scientific alignment. Teams scrambled to cross-reference data, rerun simulations, and alert observatories across multiple hemispheres. Within hours, NASA confirmed it, an uncharted object moving at impossible speed, on a path that defied gravity as we understand it. It didn't slingshot from Jupiter's orbit, and it wasn't nudged by Saturn's pull. This thing wasn't bound by our solar system's invisible rules. It was something else entirely. And it was heading straight for the sun. At first, the announcement was met with muted curiosity. Another rock, perhaps one of the many fragments drifting endlessly through space. But then came the first anomaly. The object's speed, over 152,000 miles per hour, was not only unmatched by known asteroids or comets, but oddly consistent. No deceleration. No irregular orbit. It moved like it knew where it was going. And that's when the real questions began. Simulations were run in reverse, attempting to trace its origin. But instead of leading to the Kuiper Belt or the Oort cloud, it pointed further, much further, into interstellar space. Some models suggested it came from the very core of the Milky Way. If true, that would mean this object had been in motion for tens of thousands of years, unseen, undisturbed. Until now. Its official designation was soon released. 3I Interstellar Object Atlas. Caught first by the Atlas Sky Scanning System, designed specifically to detect near-Earth hazards before they get too close, this object stood out from the start. Not because of its threat, but because of its precision. Its path was perfect. Too perfect. And its surface was strange. Brightness measurements didn't match its assumed size. It reflected more light than it should have, like a mirror in the dark. And not just any mirror. It behaved like polished metal, not stone or ice. It didn't tumble randomly like a rogue asteroid would. Its rotation was stable, deliberate. Almost mechanical. That's when the James Webb Space Telescope turned its gaze. Webb, designed to peer into the earliest galaxies, now focused on something just inside our neighborhood. And what it saw was unsettling. The object gave off a faint, consistent thermal signature, not the chaotic emissions you'd expect from natural material. Its temperature was oddly regulated. Steady. Controlled. Not flaring. Not freezing. Just stable. Too stable. Then came the whispers. Dr. Avi Loeb, a well-respected astrophysicist from Harvard, reignited a debate that many thought had been buried after 2017's Oumuamua encounter. That first interstellar visitor had defied explanation, moving in erratic ways that could not be explained by solar radiation or gravity. It had no comet tail, no emissions, and yet it accelerated after passing the sun. Loeb had suggested that Oumuamua might have been artificial, perhaps a light sail or a probe from another civilization. Many scoffed, but some quietly took notice. Now, with 3I Atlas showing similar, if not more pronounced, signs of strangeness, the hypothesis returned. And this time it was harder to ignore. This was another rock. Why was it so reflective? Why didn't it shed particles? Why was it accelerating without any visible thrust or outgassing? And most terrifyingly, why did it appear to be adjusting its course? Theories circulated behind closed doors. One possibility? These objects were probes, unmanned, autonomous messengers sent from another system or even another galaxy, designed to observe, record, and perhaps, if the time was right, interact. Atlas wasn't alone in its mystery. It followed a pattern, one that was only now starting to emerge. In 2017 came Oumuamua. In 2019, 2I Borisov, a high-speed comet with volatility and brightness far beyond expectation. And now in 2025, 3I Atlas. Each stranger than the last. Each bearing traits that separated them from the debris that regularly floats through space. For decades, humanity watched the skies and found silence. But in just under 10 years, we've been visited not once, not twice, but 3 times. And each time the visitor got closer, more detailed, more unexplainable. Some now ask, is this a coincidence? Or is it a pattern? A deliberate sequence disguised as random events? What if we're not just observers in this story? What if we're participants in a conversation that began long before we learned to listen? Among all the raw data and technical jargon lay a question that few dared voice aloud. What if this object isn't a product of nature? What if it's something made? Not aliens as we imagine them. Not creatures. But machines. Silent, autonomous, built for long journeys through deep space. The kind of things we ourselves are just beginning to imagine. What if these are probes, dispatched across the cosmos to catalog planets, stars, civilizations? Loeb proposed that we should treat 3I Atlas as a signal, not just an anomaly. That its behaviors, its course corrections, its brightness, its consistent heat, weren't random but meaningful. And more importantly, intentional. The Webb telescope continued to scan it, reporting back irregularities. Its surface composition didn't match any known material from our solar system. It was smooth, metallic, possibly engineered. Its spin remained perfectly aligned with its trajectory. There was no wobble, no drift. And as it approached the inner solar system, its path curved, ever so slightly, but enough to raise alarms. This wasn't the result of solar wind or gravitational perturbation. It was something else. Something far more controlled. And for the first time, the world's leading astrophysicists began to quietly acknowledge what the data seemed to say. We might be looking at something artificial. Something built. And the real question, the one that sent shivers through think tanks and observatories alike, wasn't what it was made of. Was why now? Why had our solar system remained untouched for so long, only to be visited 3 times in such short succession? Why were these objects all behaving in ways that defy explanation? And why was this one, 3I Atlas, slowing down as it got closer? Data continued to pour in. The object's motion deviated slightly from prediction models. Not enough to cause panic, but enough to confirm what many feared. This object wasn't drifting. It was navigating, making adjustments, reacting. As days passed, more institutions joined the study. Spectral analysis revealed unusual energy signatures, low frequency, rhythmic, almost musical. Some dismissed it as background interference. Others weren't so sure. Because in a universe governed by chaos, rhythm suggests design. The Webb team, joined by European and Asian counterparts, now focused on one goal: understanding whether 3I Atlas was a message or a messenger. The answers may not be immediate. They may not even be clear. But as of now, humanity stands at the edge of something vast. A doorway perhaps. Or a mirror. One thing is certain, this is no ordinary rock. And if we are indeed being watched, then the question shifts from what is it doing here, to what happens next? And that is what keeps scientists up at night. Because for the first time, we are not simply explorers. We are the explored. The data continues to flow. And so we wait. Eyes on the sky. Breath held. Because whatever this is, it's coming closer. And the silence of space may be the last quiet we hear before the response begins. It began with silence. Thick, deliberate silence. The kind that isn't born from uncertainty, but from realization. We're not just observing this object. We might be under observation too. With the James Webb Space Telescope fixed on this anomaly, teams at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center conducted a full spectral analysis. Expectations were grounded in science: iron signatures, silicates, frozen gas residue. All standard ingredients of celestial debris. But what returned from the instruments was nothing short of paradigm-shattering. The surface didn't match anything cataloged before. Absorption lines emerged, subtle yet undeniable, hinting at advanced carbon structures. Structures that, in laboratory conditions, are typically engineered. These weren't the fingerprints of chaotic geology. They looked like patterns of manufacture. Symmetrical rotation. Selective heat absorption on one hemisphere. One side warming faster than the other, possibly designed to interact with sunlight in a controlled way. As if the object wasn't just reflecting light but playing with it. Directing it. More anomalies piled up. Fluctuating electromagnetic fields. Variations in density inconsistent with a solid rock, suggesting internal cavities or even layers. Intentional, compartmentalized like a machine built to travel time in silence. This wasn't behaving like a rock. It didn't belong in the same categories that science has used for decades to label comets, asteroids, or even rogue planetary debris. And then the question, if this isn't a rock, what is it? The implications detonated across observatories worldwide. From JPL in Pasadena to the European Southern Observatory, from India's ISRO to Japan's JAXA. Even national defense agencies were tuning in, not because they cared about astronomy but because something foreign had entered our territory, and its nature was now a classified concern. Public enthusiasm was met first with awe, then with sudden silence. Web pages tracking its path vanished overnight. NASA's data feed halted. Raw spectrometry files were locked behind credentials, and mission logs citing internal review replaced once public graphs. Freedom of Information Act requests returned documents that were blacked out line after line. Even scientists, those who had openly commented on early findings, went quiet. Reshuffled. Reassigned. Removed. What? What had they found that made transparency a threat? Astrophysicists began to talk, not in journals but in code, in backchannel emails and encrypted calls. A single theory began to gain traction. What if this object wasn't just an accident? What if its discovery was the last domino in a long chain of silent provocations? A test. A probe. A signal waiting for us to reach the technological threshold required to notice it. Because until now we weren't looking hard enough. Our tools were too weak. Our reach too short. But now, with instruments like James Webb, with quantum computers sharpening our models, and AI processing trillions of data points, we've crossed a line. And on the other side of that line, something was waiting. Think about it, for billions of years the universe was quiet. No messages. No anomalies. No evidence of engineered anything. And then in rapid succession, Oumuamua in 2017, Borisov in 2019, and now this. 3 interstellar objects in under a decade, each weirder than the last. Too fast, too perfect, too aligned with our advances in space technology. What if these weren't coincidences? What if they were calibration points? James Webb wasn't built to detect life. It was built to study the birth of stars, the formation of galaxies, the echoes of the Big Bang. And yet, instead of staring at ancient quasars or deep-field nebulas, it now finds itself focused on something far more local, far more pressing. Something that isn't just drifting by but perhaps responding. And what if it is responding? What if its subtle movements, its tiny course corrections, its symmetrical thermal emissions, its layered density, aren't glitches or natural physics at all? What if they're choices? That would mean it sees us. That would mean it's aware. One of the most disturbing ideas quietly passed among scientists is this: the object might not be broadcasting. It might be recording, cataloging our observations, mapping our telescopic capabilities, measuring how long it took us to notice, how fast we reacted, what kinds of instruments we used. In short, it could be watching the watchers. And this realization shifts the power dynamic. Because now we're the experiment. Our reactions, not just our readings, are the variable. And what happens next may depend on what this object concludes about us. Think of a civilization that sent it long before our ancestors lit their first fire. A people, or something else, so advanced that they don't need to invade, communicate, or even warn. They simply plant seeds. Wait. And observe. The greatest horror isn't a fleet of spaceships descending from the clouds. It's something like this, silent, distant, elegant, and deliberate. Something that tells us, you're not first. You're not alone. You were simply not ready to know, until now. James Webb has turned its mirror not just outward but inward. And what we see staring back isn't another galaxy. It's a question, a cosmic Rorschach test that reveals who we are, what we fear, and what we're willing to believe. The data continues to stream in, but the narrative has slowed. Governments are no longer releasing updates. NASA's Public Affairs Office won't comment. ESA's live streams have gone dark. And independent observatories that once tracked the object in real time are now citing technical issues. People are asking, what changed? The truth might be simple and terrifying. Something in the data crossed a threshold. Something undeniable. Something that can't be explained away with solar radiation or gravitational drift. And now we've entered a new era. One in which looking up might come with consequences. This object is still moving. Still changing. Still reflecting. Still watching? And as the scientific world tiptoes around the implications, everyday people are beginning to wake up to a terrifying possibility. This may not be a discovery. It may be a message. Not in language or light, but in presence. In the act of simply being here. Artificial or not, one thing is certain: we will never look at deep space the same way again. The cosmos has always been vast, mysterious, and indifferent. But now it might also be attentive. This wasn't a random object. It was a threshold moment. And for all of human history we thought we were the explorers. But now we might be the observed. And the next move? It might not be ours.